Welcome to Chelsea's Vocation. Chelsea raised two children on the autism spectrum, Justice and Noe, into adulthood. They're the reason why she can't help but smile when she recognizes autism in another human, especially a child. Chelsea spent almost 2 decades studying this neurotype as a parent professional, learning how to better adapt her own behavior and the environment around autistic children to both encourage and foster their development. She hopes through this podcast that you might better understand how neurotypical people process your neurology if you're autistic, or how to better yourself as someone who values autistic humans and your relationship with them. Chelsea is a lifelong learner and expects you are too. So don't hesitate to reach out to her through social media comments or the contact form on our website with your own insights. If you're coming to this podcast after the first 5 episodes, you may want to go to the show and review one or more of those foundational episodes to know where she's coming from. Either way, we're glad you're here now.
Let me tell you why I'm so glad that Jessica Sciborski is here today in the order of the roles I have known her in. First of all, she's a rock star special education teacher. I first met her about 15 years ago when I was doing staff and student services in elementary schools, talking about autism, of course, and she thought it would be a good idea for me to chat with a class of 3rd graders about different brain wiring. In order for children to make connections to their autistic classmates, we, with parental consent, would chat with parents and educators about these student subjects, as we called them, and then share relevant information in a developmentally appropriate way with their peers in order to lay a foundation for friendship formation. I will never forget this particular student subject because he at first was not having our presence in his classroom at all. Like he was hiding behind your leg and growling at me. But then, before anyone else was in the classroom, I talked to him instead of about him. And while he was not interacting verbally with me at the time, I could tell that he perceived the way I was talking about autism wasn't negative or threatening, and I saw by his body language that he was intrigued but skeptical. As his peers filed into the classroom and we started our program, he was in the back of the room. When the discussion about autism got more personal and positive, he crept forward. When we highlighted his strengths, he came right up front. And before I knew it, he was participating. I tell that story because I think it has something to do with practicing neuroaffirmation, which is today's podcast topic. The second role I knew you in was as my firstborn's daily living skills mentor. You and I had become Facebook friends, and I was starting to feel desperately in need of a summer therapist for him. Because he needed at least 3 hours per day of structure to remain regulated, his summer therapist was an important part of his plan. I took to Facebook figuring someone might know someone, and you answered the call directly. I was delighted. That was the beginning of a magical summer and an enduring relationship. So now basically you're family, whether you like it or not, Jessica. Finally, I know you to be a mama of a small autistic human. God has a way of weaving this incredible tapestry of life together, and it looks to me like he's been laying a foundation for your son for a long time. I think the audience has a good idea about why I thought of you when I considered this episode topic. So here we go. 2 questions is what I've planned for you. April is Autism Acceptance Month. Do you think there's a difference between being accepting and being affirming? If so, please explain.
I think there definitely is a difference. When I reflected on the difference between acceptance and neuroaffirmation, I think there's 3 different levels to this. When I first started with autism, it was all about awareness. It was the experts in the field, parents, teachers, other professionals, talking about autistic people, deciding what's important for autistic people and what's important for other people to know. When I think about the difference between acceptance and affirmation, I think about acceptance as being about autistic people. Yes, we are recognizing them, we're respecting and valuing autistic individuals, but we're really just focused on the autism. What is autism? What does your autism look like? What are the behaviors? What do you need? Those kinds of things. But neuroaffirming is more of focusing on all different neurotypes. It includes ADHD, anxiety, and other neurotypes. It's about embracing differences instead of treating them as symptoms, helping autistic people to thrive in their community rather than trying to get them to conform to what the societal norms are. It's definitely looking at autism as a different operating system and not a deficit within one operating system. Neuroaffirming is a shift from fixing people to helping them thrive in their homes, schools, jobs, community, etc.
So, what I'm hearing you say is there's definitely a difference between acceptance and affirmation. So, if we are going to be accepting of an autistic neurotype, it kind of presumes that we've done some of the work of the awareness already. And a lot of that awareness, as you were saying, is coming from experts and not necessarily coming from autistics. So, if we move into the acceptance part, now we're accepting autistics to tell us about them. The awareness isn't coming from experts anymore. Now it's coming from the autistic community themselves. So we're going to accept what you have to tell us about your neurology, about your lived experience. And that's going to help us inform how we interpret your behavior because it has some communicative intent, right? And now the affirmation part is I see you, you're valid, your behavior is speaking something to me that I need to pay attention to. We've kind of taken it from experts doing it all to we see you, we accept you, to we are affirming that every neurotype, not just autistic, not just neurotypical, is a valid neurotype that deserves some respect, some dignity, and certainly deserves to have their voice amplified. Does that kind of sound right?
Yeah, that sounds exactly right. It's all about empowering autistic individuals to advocate for themselves and to let people know what they need and what they're trying to communicate.
I have to say, I'm fresh off of being at an autism conference. And on the last day, they had a panel of experts, all autistics, which was so great. And there was a guy on the panel who was talking about the way that allistic people, when I say allistic, I mean non-autistic, will jump in when they see an autistic person in distress and try to quote unquote help. Okay. And this question was posed to all the people on the panel. And I don't know if this gentleman intentionally said this word, but he said overvene. So when someone jumps in and overvenes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know that he meant to say that, but that's a mood and I'm here for it because
for sure
we can overvene as allistic people and jump in there and try to overhelp. So I like what you said when we need to figure out if they need help at all. Just because they are working through something doesn't mean they need us to fix it. They're perfectly capable a lot of times of figuring it out on their own. Now, when they're a small human, we help co-regulate until they learn to regulate, right? It's reasonable to help them do that. It's important to help them do that. But once you're an adult, if you're going to be affirming, don't assume that they need your help all the time.
I have two thoughts from that, actually. One, I've heard of people saying, well, I'm autistic. And then the person they're talking to says, oh, no, we use person first language. You need to say that you have autism or that you live with autism or whatever they decide. If that person wants to call themselves whatever they want to call themselves, that is affirming them to accept what they're saying about themselves. The other one with the overvening, as a parent of an autistic child, I don't need help in grocery stores. Like when my son is melting down and having a big issue, I don't need a random stranger to tell me how to manage that. I don't need someone to give me their opinions, or if I just had a day with him, he'd be just fine.
Yeah, I relate to that. And I also want to add something to that because I feel like for sure that's the old school way. Your son and my son are essentially 2 decades between each other. Some of the comments that I got inspired me to have little business cards inside my wallet that said, thank you for understanding that we are processing autism in a way that is clumsy right now. Basically, it was a nice way to kind of say back off, right? Because they don't know. But what I also want to say is every now and then I'll be in a space where you can tell if it's a 12-year-old who's losing their business. This is not because they've chosen to lose their business and they're trying to make a scene, right? And I can empathize with that because I can even feel my neck getting red right now as I talk about it, because when that kind of stuff would happen, I just needed to get out, right? And so I have kind of done like, I see you kind of thing and offered to maybe, can I get your cart and bring it to the front and see if they can hold on to it for you? Can I help you get your kid out of the store? That I think might be the kind of help that might be welcome in a situation like that, or is even that kind of not a good idea?
No, the I see you behavior is great. It's really great when somebody is trying to help you, not trying to like judge your parenting style, but like, what can we do to help? When my son is having a meltdown and I recognize it as an actual neurological meltdown and we are not fighting the neurology, we're not coming back from wherever we were. For example, a few weeks ago, he wanted to play his Switch in the car because it's a long drive. But he was so impatient with getting the parental controls fixed that he put a PIN number in so many times that it was a 30-minute hard stop on the Switch. So he's screaming. And finally, like we just said, you can have whatever it is he was asking for in place of the Switch, but you're going to need to wait 12 minutes. We see you, we hear you. We will give you what you need, but you also have to give us something. I don't like when we get, well, he got his way, didn't he? That's not affirming his neurology or us as parents.
I appreciate this differentiation between acceptance and affirmation. And we kind of talked about this in the last episode with Chris, like moving from awareness to acceptance to affirmation. This is a bit of an evolution and it takes some intentionality. That's what I'm trying to tell people when I'm talking about practicing neuroaffirmation. I'm talking about, hey, parents, look at the interventions that you're using for your kiddo. Is that affirming their neurology or is it trying to change their neurotype to make it look like something more comfortable for you or for educators or for the house of worship that you go to? That's not affirming. Helping them be the best human they can be, that's affirming, in my opinion. I'm glad to know that we're kind of in this same space, on this same page, from awareness to acceptance to affirmation. And the cool thing is the autistic community is already over it, right? Like they're over affirmation. They've been there for a minute. They're like, how about action? How about advocacy? But that's not the topic today. We're just going to focus on neuroaffirmation because I still feel like this is a fairly new concept, especially for non-autistics who are trying to be part of this community in a way that lifts people up. All right. I'm going to have to ask you to date yourself after I ask this question because I realize, like, I know approximately when you graduated college, but not everybody else does. So, how have you seen attitudes about autism change professionally and personally since you attended college? What year did you either do your student teaching or graduate? You pick the year that's most comfortable for you.
I was a teaching intern through the Milwaukee Teacher Education Program, and I graduated in 2005. In the past, autism was all about awareness and the experts telling you what to do. We looked at autism as a disease, and we looked at deficits that people had, and we tried to fix it. How do we replace behaviors? Lots of one-size-fits-all solutions to these so-called deficits or problems. I can remember one time I had a student who I had a great plan with. We had great strategies and tools for him to use in different locations throughout the school. And another teacher decided that she wanted to sit with him instead for an assembly. All of a sudden now he has a beanbag and headphones and a fidget and something to chew on. And I was like, what is going on? Like, he's always sat with his peers and he was fine. Well, he has autism, so he needs these tools. No. He didn't. We used to look a lot at problem behaviors. I don't know how many times I said, quiet hands, quiet hands. We don't flap out here. You can do that at home. There's no flapping out here. Until one time I just asked a student, like, why are you doing that? And she said, my brain's really excited and that's the way to make that stop so I can focus. So we're telling them to do things that they're trying to regulate and we're trying to stop. Lots of speaking for students, lots of scaffolding sentences for students. I like ice cream because, well, what if he doesn't like ice cream? We're not accepting his communication. We were just always trying to, with best intentions, advocate for students, accommodate for students, and fix their problems. One that always has stuck out to me is the eyes on me, demanding eye contact. We have to teach you to do eye contact. We really don't, and use your words. Again, not involving students at all. A lot of using rewards and consequences to try to mold and shape behaviors and ideas in the classroom. That wasn't always so successful, and now we know why. A lot of focus on the special ed room. If you're having behaviors, we're going to the special ed room. Or, you know what, your behaviors aren't great in math class, we'll do math in the special ed room instead. They could be a math genius, but we're going to do it in a separate space because you're flapping and stimming or whatever they were doing. And then again, the sensory room. If you're having a sensory problem, we're going to the sensory room, and there's where you can do your sensory things. It doesn't matter what your sensory preferences or needs are. We have the beanbag and the crash mat, and we have this light, and we have this sound machine, and having several students in there trying to regulate at once. It was just a lot of one size fits all. And then there was the awareness. Lots of campaigns, the puzzle piece, which has come and gone, as autistic people don't really want to be a puzzle to be solved anymore. That's a hard one to get rid of. I know when I'm online and I try to tell people like, no, thank you for the blue. No, thank you for the puzzles. And then I just remember lots of aggressive correction of other professionals. Like, you're not doing this right. And I know better. And just people arguing and trying to be the expert and trying to know more than everybody else. And then one size fits all, like transition plans too. You can go work at Goodwill. You can help out at the Salvation Army. You can be a custodian at the hospital, not really focusing on what those people wanted to do with their future. As far as now, we've definitely had a huge cultural shift into the affirmation space with empowering autistic people of all ages to speak for themselves. We look at autism as a difference, a culture, in many cases, a gift. We embrace how autism makes people different and how other neurological differences fit in there as well. Instead of trying to replace behaviors, we help them thrive. What strategies and tools do you need? And we make sure that it's individualized. What are the fidgets that you like? Do you like headphones? Do you not like headphones? Where do you prefer to sit? We give those kids the tools they need. And accepting all forms of communication. If you want to speak with an AAC device, echolalia is a form of communication. You just need to figure out what they're trying to say. We don't say, it's not time for Kung Fu Panda right now. We say, why is he talking about Kung Fu Panda? What could he possibly be trying to tell us? And then just a strong drive to teach the students to advocate for themselves, giving them tools, saying, in your IEP, it says that you can chew gum here if your mouth needs to be busy. You need to ask for that. Student-led IEPs, they're legally supposed to start at 14. I've had younger students come in. My own son is 7. He'll be 8 next week. He knows things about his IEP, and I talk to him about it. I tell him what his goals are. I tell him what he's working on. It's not a secret. And I ask him, what do you think you need to work on at school? Give him the input too, so that he's not blindsided at 14 with, you're coming to a meeting, we're going to talk about you. Teaching autistic individuals and all students really to be mindful, to self-regulate. There's a strong drive for inclusion now. Universal design for learning is great. We give tools to everyone. It's no longer, this is Joey's basket of tools. This room has a basket of tools. This room has a calming corner. This room has headphones. Whatever anybody needs, they can grab it. Affirmation is really led by autistic individuals. There's higher expectations for the future. There's several college options now, and definitely compassionate education of others. Like, let me help you understand my students, my kid, my coworkers, whoever the individuals are.
Jessica, what you have described really takes me back to when Justice was little and I was starting to go to conferences, starting to understand about autism, starting to see the way that universities were teaching about autism and about educating autistic students. It's like a scrapbook right now for me of all of the things that have happened over the last 2 decades. I think as parents, a lot of times we are so defensive of that person first language in the beginning, especially if you are not an autistic parent. If you are coming at this from maybe a little bit of ableism that you didn't really realize you had, and you're like, I don't like that autism label, that doesn't define my kid, so I'm going to call him my son with autism and not my autistic son. But then you start to listen to the people in the community, the actually autistic people who overwhelmingly prefer identity first language, because it's not like they're going to leave their neurology at home when they leave home. Their neurology comes with them. Understanding that neurology is not going to change from environment to environment, but certainly their home environment is probably where they've learned to make the best adaptations. Now take that neurology out of its comfort zone and put it in a discomfort zone, and you can expect dysregulation. I really appreciate how we've come so far in better understanding. And the reason we've come further in understanding is because we're listening to autistic people. They are the experts. We need to lean into what they understand about themselves, to what they want to tell you about others in their community who might not be as adept at communicating with us allistic people. And thank you also for validating the different kinds of communication. Not all communication has to be spoken language. And someone not having any words that can come out of their mouth doesn't mean they don't have thoughts in their brain, that they're struggling to get out one way or another. I love that you mentioned universal design for learning. I don't know why this is so slow in coming to Wisconsin. When I've been at national conferences for the last 15 years, they've been talking about it for a long time and all the data that goes along with it. I love that we have gotten rid of like the disease and the deficit model. That was awareness nonsense. It certainly wasn't in acceptance, and it sure does not belong in affirmation, right? Neither do labels like low functioning and high functioning, barf, right? Jessica, thank you for talking us through how we got from awareness to acceptance to affirmation. Really appreciate your expertise on this topic.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Chelsea's Vocation. We hope it was valuable to you. If it was, we'd appreciate you sharing it with someone, reviewing it, and/or rating it. Subscribe to the podcast to be notified when new episodes are published. We wish you the best as you learn, maybe unlearn, and do better for yourself and those around you. Chelsea encourages you to be gentle with yourself, be gracious with others, and be protective of your own and others' dignity. Until next time, take care.